Welcome to episode 3 of Reverse Engineering Winners, the series where we decode how ordinary ideas become extraordinary companies and uncover the decisions that changed entire industries. Today's story is about a tiny startup that dared to challenge Adobe's decades-long dominance and nearly rewrote the future of design.
At its core, this story isn't just about software updates or picking out new color palettes. It's a classic structural conflict. We're talking about a massive, entrenched monopoly going up against a small startup armed with literally nothing but a radically different vision of the future. It's a true David versus Goliath narrative, and it completely changed how products are built today.
Part 1. Adobe Monopoly and Design in Silos.
To really understand this disruption, we first have to understand the empire. For decades, Adobe held unquestioned dominance over the creative industry. They were practically untouchable. But there was a fundamental friction in how their software was built. You see, you were forced to work on an isolated desktop. That meant buying expensive licenses and constantly saving heavy files to a local hard drive. Now compare that friction to the fluid promise of working entirely on the web.
If you were around in the desktop days, every design team in the world shared the exact same headache. You'd be emailing these massive zip files back and forth, desperately asking on chat, RER, where's the final file? Was it homepage_final_v2 or homepage_final_final_v4? It was just absolute chaos. Work was constantly getting lost or accidentally overwritten.
The crazy thing is, the problem wasn't a lack of tools. Adobe's tools were incredibly powerful. The fundamental flaw was actually in how human beings were forced to collaborate. The workflow itself was entirely broken. Essentially, the software was holding teams back from actually working together.
Part 2. The browser bet and a crazy idea.
Enter a young visionary named Dylan Field. He saw this broken workflow and made a totally counterintuitive decision. He wanted to build professional-grade design software natively in the web browser. Now, industry veterans literally laughed at this. They thought rendering complex graphics smoothly on a web page was a technical feat that was absolutely impossible. The browser was for reading text, they argued, not for heavy graphic design. But Figma just ignored the noise. From 2012 all the way to 2015, they sat quietly in stealth mode. These were grueling years spent working in the shadows, literally rebuilding a graphics engine from scratch just to make a browser run as fast as a heavy desktop app. And the outcome of this massive technical gamble was profound. It meant escaping the desktop prison. No more downloads, no more installations, no more worrying if you had a Mac or a PC. You just share a simple URL, and you're in. Ekdam Azadi. Total freedom from the heavy, restrictive files of the past.
Part 3. Multiplayer Revolution and Real-Time Joy.
Because the software lived on the web, it allowed for an unprecedented aha moment. Suddenly, you were seeing multiple cursors flying across the screen at the exact same time. Kamal ki baat hai, the amazing thing is just how much joy this brought to users. All of a sudden, 2, 3, or even 10 designers could be in the exact same file, designing together in real time without ever overriding each other's work. It was a massive behavioral shift. Work felt less like a solitary chore and way more like a live, collaborative jam session. And by doing this, Figma dramatically expanded the market. They didn't just steal Adobe's users. They invited entirely new people into the creative process. Developers could suddenly inspect code, copywriters could edit text directly on the canvas, and product managers could just hop in and leave comments.
Figma didn't just build a new tool. They fundamentally changed human behavior. Design was no longer this isolated thing that happened behind a closed door and was handed off only when finished. No, design became a team sport. It became transparent, inclusive, and incredibly fast.
Part 4. Cult Community. More than software.
But here's the thing. Great software isn't quite enough to dethrone a monopoly. You really need a movement. So Figma focused on building a passionate, cult-like community around the pure craft of design. Their growth strategy was relentless. They would listen to users on Twitter and Reddit, iterate rapidly in the browser, and empower the community to build and share their own plugins. And this created incredibly deep loyalty.
Because of this, the craft of the community actually became a defensive barrier. Ye unki sabse badi taakat ban gayi. This became their absolute biggest strength. Adobe could try to copy features all day long, but they simply could not clone the vibrant, protective, and massive community that was building inside and around Figma every single day.
Part 5. 20 billion threat and Adobe panics. Fast forward to 2022, and Figma had practically cornered the market on modern product design, effectively forcing the reigning giant into a really desperate corner.
Adobe realized they were losing an entire generation of creators and they had to make a drastic move. Just let this staggering number sink in for a second. $20 billion. That was the acquisition offer Adobe put on the table. The sheer scale of this price tag perfectly illustrates the sheer scale of Adobe's panic.
But then, the story takes a sudden twist. After months of intense scrutiny, the deal was actually blocked by global antitrust regulators who feared it would harm competition. It was kind of an anticlimactic resolution, honestly. The mega merger was officially canceled. Figma walked away with a cool billion-dollar breakup fee, remaining fiercely independent.
But even though the deal died, the ultimate outcome was incredibly clear. The validation was absolute. That $20 billion price tag proved to the entire world that Dylan Field's crazy browser-based bet from a decade ago was entirely correct. The underdog had officially won the war of ideas.
Part 6. Underdog Lessons and How to Win.
So, what can modern builders actually learn from this David versus Goliath story? Well, disruption rarely comes from just adding more buttons or building slightly better features. It comes from observing human behavior and eliminating friction. Adobe definitely had more features, but Figma understood how people actually wanted to interact and work together in the modern age.
And that is the core philosophy you should take away from this explainer. If you want to build something extraordinary, you have to focus relentlessly on removing friction from the user's life. Don't just build a tool for an isolated individual. Empower the entire team to collaborate without barriers.
Figma completely transformed design by moving it to the browser and making it multiplayer. It really leaves you wondering, when you look at the heavy, siloed software still being used today in finance, or law, or 3D modeling, what industry falls next? If you want to see more of these videos, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel.